Now I'm going to hand it off to Robert, who's going to go over Experience Online Testing Georgia, and he's going to go to the actual live site.
There is a link on the Georgia Milestones main page. If you go to the testing and assessment page on our website, go to the Georgia Milestones, and on the right-hand side down, I'd say 2/3 of the way through the page, you will find the link there for the Experience Online Testing Georgia. That is a link that you can share with your parents. This link here, if you want to copy it and paste it somewhere on your system's website, you're welcome to do so. But it opens up this page. It has documentation and a tutorial. And then to get into the actual site, we want to go to the test practice option. And it brings up ways for you to get into online tool training for either the end of course administration or the end of grade administration. We're going to work through the end of grade today. I believe it will be sufficient for us to be able to get across some things that we would like to highlight. So to get into the online tools training, you click on the end of grade option, and then if you click on the end of test practice, it brings up that you can get into the practice site using standard online tools, which is basically for non-accommodated students. And then you can also pick going to a form that will give you the accommodations that we make available on the public-facing site. Note, this year we have been able to make available well, let's say this, since the winter EOC administration, we have now been able to make a standard text-to-speech form available. So if you look at the second options, all of the available accommodations are available on this form. This is a form that you can use to let students go in and interact with these additional accommodation tools to see if one of them is appropriate for their needs. I'll show you the masking tool, the color contrast, and the color chooser so you have a good understanding of how these but this one has the audio, and the one thing I want to show you with the audio is the concept of for a standard accommodation, how does the reading work, and we're about starting points. I want to use a grade 6 through 8 because I want to highlight some things about the calculator on this particular practice form. Okay, now this brings you to a screen. This is exactly how the students will log in. This is a generic login, but the students will log in exactly as you would this practice form using their particular login. Now let's see how many times it takes me to get logged in. Luckily, I can get it on the first try. Now you might notice that I'm going directly to the options tab. This gives you the opportunity for the student who actually has some additional accommodations, we can go to the color choices here and set those. You can go to the contrast and color options. We'll look at those later on. And I don't see the masking tool here. Hopefully it will show up later on. Notice here under audio settings, you can set the volume. I actually have the volume turned down right now. And you can have the speed. It usually comes on in the middle, and you can have the text-to-speech read faster or slower using this option. Notice here that I've clicked on this button that says starting points. This activates will cause a screen reader to start reading where the starting point is. I'm not seeing it happen here, but we'll try it later on. I want you to be sure you understand how the follow me tracker works on this as well, but we'll take a look at that when we get into one of the forms. Okay, this is exactly what the student will see. So after they log in, they will have the option to pick a test. This is the grade 6 through 8 practice test. So when the student takes a real test, the login that's associated with the test that they're taking will give them one option. Now, DRC's platform has a fairly extensive set of directions at the beginning. This is to be sure that everything's working. You might notice that you see the light blue tracker as the text-to-speech tool reads. It tracks the words. This goes over the tools. This talks about the calculators for grades 6 through 8. Some helpful testing hints. And now we're ready to begin the test. Now you might notice, and if you go with the Experience Online Testing Georgia, that when you go to this first option with the standard read-aloud accommodation, it does not start reading. The standard accommodation does not read the passages, so if you get into that first day of testing with students with a standard read-aloud and they get to the first question and it doesn't start reading, that's because the student has to read the passage before the read-aloud or the text-to-speech will kick in. So this is the passage on the tall rock. We're going to go to the 5th page of this. And you notice when I hit the 5th page, we see the cursor start moving, which means the text-to-speech has kicked in and is reading through the item and answer choices. Again, the student has control. They can stop if they don't want it to read. If they want to go back and start it, they can hit the starting point and pick where the text-to-speech tool will start reading. Okay, the next thing that I would like to show you is starting with the practice test on question 4. Questions 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 on the practice test are an exact representation of Section 3 of the ELA test for all EOG grade level and all EOC ELA content. Notice that the first thing that happens on the left side of the page, the student is introduced to the writing task. So the purpose here is just to give the student an idea about what his extended writing task is going to be once he arrives at that item. And it just gives them some leading in directions. It tells them they're going to read 2 passages. This one happens to be 2 passages about oak trees. So the student can go and start reading. So here's the passage on the northern red oak. Notice at the bottom we're on page 2 of 5, and we keep reading through. And when we get to the end of this, notice we're on 3 of 5, and it's prompting the student to go on to the second passage. So then the student can go on and read about the hardy live oak. And now we have gotten to the last page. Just because of the way the programming works, the screen reader starts reading as the student hits the end of the page. So if the student doesn't want to hear the passage, he can stop the item, go back and read the rest of the item, and then hit his starting points, and now he can have the first item read to him. Notice that the first item is a question specific to the first reading passage, the northern red oak. Now we'll go on to would be item 56 on an operational test. Notice that the second item is specific to the second passage. It's about the hardy live oak. This would be akin to item 57 on the operational test. Now we're at the third item, and now it's asking for the student to answer a question that is related to both passages. This is the same as item 58. So section 3 ELA, you will always have an introduction to the writing topic. You read 2 passages. You'll answer 3 multiple choice questions. The first multiple choice question is usually related to the first reading passage. The second question to the second reading passage. The third multiple choice question asks a question that ties the two passages together. Now this would be item 59. This is a 2-point constructed response item that asks the students to, in their own words, answer a question about how the two items might be similar, might be different, but it is a 2-point constructed response question. Now hopefully these 4 items get the student to thinking about what they're going to write on the extended writing task. Again, this is question 7 on the practice test. This is the same for all practice tests, and it is the same as item 59 on the operational test. Okay, next we come into item 8 on the practice test, which is the same as 60. This is item 60 on the test. It reintroduces the writing task. It gives them some tips to think about as they're writing. I want to let the follow me prompt to go down and read, and I want you to watch. As the student is watching and listening to this, it follows along. Now, students who are doing this, when we get to the bottom of the page, it will actually scroll the page up, and the text box at the bottom of the page will eventually pop up, and the student will see where they need to start entering their extended writing task. Hopefully you saw how that automatically scrolled up, and as it scrolls up, now we see the response area. I'm going to stop this. I think you probably have an idea of how this works. And so here's where the student would start entering their response. Okay, and so this is the last question in the test practice for ELA. Next we get into the math portion of it. This is laid out the same for all grade levels and all content. Again, we have the reference sheets. This particular, the test practice has the formula sheets for all middle grade levels. Just be sure the student understands if they want to look at it, that the appropriate formula sheet will be available for them on their operational test. And notice that for grades 6 through 8, they have the option of using a basic or a scientific calculator. Again, these are just some multiple choice questions. I do want to go back to the ELA real quick. Something got by me that I forgot to bring up to you. This is an example of a question, an item that has 2 parts to it. Here's part A. And notice that the response to part B also has you pick one best response. Some of these responses, even in ELA, you can pick more than one response for one of these multiple select items. Here is a 2-part math question. I want to show you if we look at how this equation editor works, if a student's explaining an answer, they can say, I took the square root of 4. They can put the answer in like that, or they could use the equation editor. and then they can pop the answer in to the equation editor. So the equation editor gives them the opportunity to actually include math symbols, and if you notice that while the student is in the equation editor, they can type text as well. So there's they can take two approaches to answering these open-ended math questions. They can just type out their answer, or they can use a combination of their own words and mathematics symbols. There again, using the secure practice test and using this Experience Online Testing Georgia site would be a good way to get them acclimated to how these tools work. Now, those were the particulars about the way that this Experience Online Testing Georgia works that we wanted to show you, so you can understand how to orient the student to the functionality, so that when they get in the operational test, the way that the testing interface works and how the tools work will be familiar to them.